And I finally came to a conclusion. It sucks and it is ridiculously embarrassing to admit this, but I think I have to, and that is that I'm desperate. Hi, sisters!
Hi, everyone. It's me again. And today we're going to talk about YouTube apologies and post No More Lies YouTube. I have my gray hoodie on. We're ready. And we're going to get right into it. I would like to thank everybody also for the support and watching the most recent videos. It's been really exciting to see, both substantial and slower growth in the channel and the different types of content that I can put out for everybody. Seeing everything happen with Creepshow art really reminded me of the precedent set by James Charles's No More Lies video post Dramageddon 2. So I thought that now would be a good time, once everything has kind of died down a little bit, to kind of look into the idea of this like receipt-filled kind of formal structure type of apology video rather than the classic gray hoodie apology. So the video is in 3 parts. What was No More Lies, pre-No More Lies YouTube, and post-No More Lies YouTube. And in post-No More Lies YouTube will also touch a little bit on where James Charles is now and how he has dug a grave for himself further than just the allegations alone, given the release of No More Lies in 2019. Part 1, what was No More Lies? Dramageddon 2 came from the result of James Charles going to Coachella and getting a Sugar Bear hair sponsorship. Once he did this, Tati Westbrook came on a Instagram story crying because that James Charles, her friend, had recommended a competitor to her own brand, Halo Beauty. This also kind of was a snowball effect of some other actions that had occurred with James that had upset people, such as the $500 Sisters Tour tickets, egotistical actions he's done in the past, fights with celebrities on Twitter, etc. There was issues regarding alleged actions towards being pushy towards straight people. A lot of that was pushed primarily by Jeffree Star. However, it was touched on, of course, as well in the Tati Westbrook video by Sister. Of course, there had to be some way for James to address this. James was on tour in Australia. He was doing a meet and greet in Australia. And when By Sister came out, he was in a hotel in Australia and he made the video Tati. This was more similar to the classic gray hoodie apology, very emotional and just trying to apologize to Tati Westbrook. Emotional apologies tend to be more humanizing and people kind of want to sympathize beyond the person's direct speech. However, when they are too emotional, people will get lost in the sauce and kind of be a little bit overwhelmed by what's being said to them. Also, one reason why this video wasn't well received is that there's a bit of a social hierarchy against emotional rhetoric and emotional speech. They would rather more logical forms of thought, despite the fact that emotion is something that occurs whether you want it to or not. And a lot of these logical reactions are actually kind of fueled from anger, which people like to neglect as an emotion. But the idea of presenting receipts in the video creates a connotative idea that there's the ability to present a direct scenario to back up the apology. Connotation, by the way, is the feeling or thought that a word enacts with its meaning. So receipts or screenshots kind of give the idea of an ability to put a pin into every situation, which in the case of a lot of situations with influencers and arguments and all these kind of things, that's not actually really possible always, and has kind of created a toxic culture in itself. However, the release of No More Lies was also like the biggest Uno reverse in internet history. So part 2, pre-No More Lies YouTube. So this, I like to call kind of pre-No More Lies YouTube, was also mostly just like what happened with Dramageddon 1, where you had the classic Laura Lee crying apology.
It's probably the hardest things I've ever done.
The Manny MUA, my life, my social blade is in the red, my life is in the green.
In my mind, I thought, how could a friend do this to us? How could a friend do this to me? How can he put up a photo like this with all of us writing his own narrative?
And there's been a couple actually post No More Lies that followed this formula. Tana Mongeau's apology with I think Peter Monk calculated approximately a jump cut every 2 seconds. Also followed that kind of this plea to emotion type style. And while it was a huge meme, I understand the idea of it because there's a part of rhetoric called apologia, right? Which is apology, which is the hopes to turn the audience back on your side to get a feeling of connection with them that they will believe that your actions will change in the future. And this typically was suggested as a humanistic approach or to seem human to your audience. But at the same time, the internet has kind of twisted that into you need to present it like a court case, like a court of public opinion, which has been quite very interesting.
It was one day after Coachella. I was due to post my stories based on my contract, and up until that moment I honestly had not thought about the fact that Tati was a Sugar Bear Hair competitor, and in that moment I thought that as a friend she deserved a courtesy text to let her know the context of the sponsorship and everything that was going on.
To not even get a phone call, to not even get a text a few days prior, but right after that sponsored post went up, to have a text like, hey mom, love you, I'm stressed. Just so you know, XYZ, I just did this post, but it's no big.
Before posting my stories, I actually did text Tati first out of respect for her, giving her heads up about the sponsorship, but she was immediately upset. I tried my best to kind of explain the entire situation and also give her a direct apology as well, but at this point I had signed the contract and I absolutely had to post it. There was no getting out of it.
And because of both the backlash of the Dramageddon 1 apologies and the Tati titled video, James had to think of something else. James Charles created this kind of non-emotional political style video. So if we go into a prominent rhetorician, Michel Foucault, he talks about how power structures cause the precedence of the area that it overencompasses, right? So in the sake of YouTube, that would be the powerful, such as like the many subscribers, the most popular in the certain field, right? So James Charles actually was the most popular, and I think is currently the most popular beauty YouTuber, right? So he will set the precedent. He is the richest and most powerful objectively. Well, of course, I wouldn't say richest because Jeffree Star is literally rolling in so much money. It's insane, but you know what I'm saying. If he could not work with the apology style from before, he had the ability to set a precedent though with his status, and then kind of resulted in everyone underneath him having to work within it.
I know I got emotional in the video. I apologize. It was something very, very hard for me to deal with, especially when it came to talking about my very own mind.
So old apology styles were working with the ideas of the kind of common folk, for lack of a better term, the way you would apologize to your friend or apologize to a family member. But James Charles kind of followed the politician structure, the people, the powerful people, and how they interact with situations that have to be in a sort of professional scape. Even though the kind of idea of YouTube is that you connect with your audience, James Charles took an emotionless, almost lack of humanity approach to an apology style video, but also in a way to vindicate himself, which is really interesting. So James Charles followed the style of the powerful outside of his realm and essentially put a precedent for the rest of YouTube as a result. Now we go to part 3, which is post No More Lies YouTube. James Charles' No More Lies video vindicated him in a way that the internet rarely sees. Typically you have kind of a buffer period for the apology, right? Where someone will apologize and take a little time off, come back, or they'll be really cautious or quiet for a while. I'm thinking even like the PewDiePie apology from 2017, I want to say. There has also been apologies that have had similar situations with them as well from other parts of the internet, even like Manny MUA and Laura Lee. So there's also like middle grounds beyond the, No More Lies style. I know there was a situation with a YouTuber called Slazo that an ex-girlfriend had alleged that he had been abusive towards her in a relationship from when he was quite young. However, there was issues with the screenshots presented, and there was a bit of altering allegedly to the content. And Slazo was actually quote unquote canceled and betrayed by his friends, some of them being the YouTuber, one of them being the YouTuber I'm Alex. And this kind of was another one of those big Uno reverse moments, except the problem with the Slazo situation is it appears he hasn't recovered, like as a person. He was able to upload content a couple of times and still get good views on the videos, but more or less he kind of just has died off the platform, despite the fact that he had gained pretty decent popularity and was getting really good views on his videos, some like with a couple, I believe, reaching over 1 million views. Another situation where there's receipts presented, but they've leveled with the audience is actually Power Cynical. Power Cynical, if you don't know, is a commentary channel with, well, you probably would know because he has like 4 million subscribers. If I remember correctly, in that sphere is one of the most popular. I think Drama Alert might have more subs now, but if not, it's probably Power Cynical. He had an issue with DMs with a minor regarding niche, how do I say this? Attraction type content. Think dressed like an animal I don't know how to say it in like a, you know, PC way, you know, or not PC, like a child friendly way, but these more niche communities of kink style stuff. Regardless, so Pyrocynical was talking to this kid. Pyrocynical himself was quite young, I think 18 or 19 at the time.
Let me give a little background. When I was 19 and 20, I liked to take part in this degenerate furry roleplay with pretty much anyone that would reciprocate. And looking back on it now, the word cringe, that doesn't near do enough justice to how sad this all was. These conversations never led to any nudes being exchanged. It was just purely fantasy garbage, something which Ivory himself confirms.
Did he ever ask you for nudes?
No.
No.
What these people look like, their gender, these weren't variables. Like, I could have been doing this with a 90-year-old cave troll and it wouldn't have made a difference. It was roleplay after all. You're just pretending. Now it turns out my accuser, Ivory, one of the people that I've had these conversations with, was 15. That is 3 to 4 years younger than I was. It was entirely my responsibility to verify his age before having these conversations. And the fact that I didn't, that is so incredibly negligent of me to do so. I may have been young myself, but still old enough to know better.
And the person that he was talking to told him, apparently, allegedly, if I got this wrong, please let me know, that they were over 18 and they were in a community of people that were over 18, but Pyrocynical was talking to them and they were a minor. This was also a few years ago. And probably like the peak of the commentary community and Pyrocynical's public community popularity. So this is like 2016, 2017, you know, Gamergate, Leafy is here time when he was talking to this person. So Pyrocynical obviously got flack, rightfully so, for abusing his power and being negligent to the responsibilities that he has as someone with such a wide audience, as well as who he communicates with online. However, he did make a video kind of talking about the situation at hand, where he was very like structured and stable and presented, you know, proof and stuff. This was after floundering a little bit by trying to back it up on Reddit. But he did this he kept his face in the same way Slazo did, the same way James Charles did. However, he had a little bit more colloquial nature, but also the seriousness of the situation was not of the gravity that James Charles's was. There's actually videos on like how Pyrocynical's uncancelable and like the complex that's built with his community. And I think that's like really interesting. I kind of want to do a video on Pyrocynical, but it's kind of hard because I kind of like Pyrocynical, and I usually am worried about content creators that I feel like I have some sort of attachment to, which, like I said, was hard too, especially with this situation, because I feel like I have to, obviously, like, it's a moral obligation to myself too, to distance myself. But then again, the video vindicated decently. But then again, I don't know what's really the truth. So I kind of just sit back on that one and think, because you don't want to do things like the Slazo situation where you go in head over heels, you go in full, and it turns out that a lot of it was fabricated. So this style doesn't always work, especially when you don't present yourself in a neutral way and logical way. And people kind of need to see your face in apologies, I've noticed, especially in this post No More Lies YouTube. Like, for an example, Creepshow Art's video, which what I had mentioned earlier, was very poorly received because Shannon just tried to throw in as many screenshots as possible in a very manipulative way and hope that that would have been enough. Just because a screenshot is present doesn't mean it's used properly and doesn't mean it actually has anything to do with anything. In the case of Creepshow Art, she was trying to prove a pattern of behavior by getting supposedly obsessive tendencies of a 13-year-old Emily Artful.
Emily has been posting online to various accounts since she was 13, all of which have been verified to belong to her. From these accounts, I've realized that Emily has an extremely long pattern of obsessive behavior to people she's romantically attracted to, and a long pattern of calling the people who she's attracted to abusive after the fact. As of now, according to her own post, she has accused upwards of 18 people of abusing her in her life, including her own parents. She later retracted most of these claims, and now states they're all loving. In her first DeviantArt profile under the name Gothic Kazooie, which is clearly her as seen in this picture, Emily talks about stalking her teacher in various posts, something she...
That's not going to help you. You don't judge people as their children. You don't judge people when they're children, when they're full-grown adults. But it's been almost 20 years since this stuff happened, especially because they were children when it did happen. It's one thing, maybe 25 and 45, if they did heinous crimes or whatever, but when they're children, that doesn't make sense. So not only did Creepshow Art lack that aspect of humanity, she showed that there was a manipulative use to the receipts at hand, which now people revisiting James Charles's video, the said No More Lies video, notice there's some pretty peculiar screenshots at hand.
I have never and would never and will never use my fame, money, or power to manipulate or get any sexual actions from a guy. That is disgusting. It is not me. And the fact that Tati brought this up blows my mind because she knows. He then left and sent me a message afterwards thanking me for being so understanding, and I told him that I would always be there for him if he needed literally anything. Point being, everything that happened in the hotel room was 100% consensual, and this is confirmed.
I said yes.
By the only two parties that were actually there being myself and Sam. After this night, Sam and I continued.
And I think this unearthing actually came from Gabby Hanna's series when people were noticing that she would increase screenshot volume by overlapping the same ones and being really outright manipulative with the so-called proof that she presented. But now still, if you're not putting in receipts and you, even though maybe you couldn't track all the events at hand, you are not telling the truth. There is no reason to believe someone without receipt. Which, while it's fair to have to prove what you're doing, at the same time, it kind of creates a receipt obsessed society. People that will take screenshots of every conversation and worries that they will be manipulated later. This kind of having to look over your shoulder all the time, regardless of if you're doing something bad on purpose or not. Because while it's one thing when you're being heinous and you're being, you know, gross and borderline predatory or outright predatory at times, there is sometimes where things will get twisted, which has happened in the case of the Slazzle situation. That, like I said, kind of creates this obsessive hoarding receipt society rather than one that can own up to mistakes in a more humanistic way. But with current James Charles, with new allegations at hand, he can't really do it again. When you have set a new precedent in the way that you have and have shifted everything in the way that you have, people expect you to be able to do that again. And people are suggesting that, you know, James Charles has to come out with another video full of screenshots and full of proof. Problem is, when you're actually guilty, that doesn't really work now, does it? Because there are new allegations of James Charles allegedly talking to someone who's barely 18 and threatened to leak their photos. The receipts present even show, like, you can see James Charles's nails and the carpet, and you can see that there are nude photos in the screenshot. As obviously I cannot post it here because of that. I will hopefully be able to link it on Twitter. If not, like I just said, I guess you don't have to believe me if I can't present the receipts. Obviously I can't put the screenshot in. It literally has nudity in it. Like, James Charles now has set an expectation that he needs to be able to pull receipts and do full proof of everything, which is why you can see in the last apology video he did how poorly it was received, the taking accountability video, and then which he deleted, which I have, and the get ready with me, let's talk video, which was absolutely ridiculous. So No More Lies has set a precedent for receipt-style vindication videos. But now the person who has originated this idea, and while it existed in the past, I can even think of Personable again, where he made a video in 2016 about Keemstar, or even the iDubbbz Content Cops. James Charles really made it a widespread way of focusing on apologies and vindicating yourself, and this receipt culture really, I find, escalated quickly after that video came out. So in conclusion, No More Lies kind of set what I feel like is a somewhat unrealistic precedent for tracking all of your interactions on the internet for the sake of if something goes wrong. But again, kind of has created a new culture of how to approach YouTube content and how to approach situations that occur to you. And it's interesting because James Charles is not able to pull another James Charles with the current situation, which we'll see where that goes. Because I don't understand how he's not quite literally imprisoned, but that is a whole other video that could be made. It really shows the power of rhetoric and the power of the public opinion, and why disregarding things like rhetoric is not necessarily helpful, because then you will make get ready with me comeback videos with allegations of misconduct, is what we'll say. Let me know if you want a video on the Personable situation and both his video and the videos I've seen regarding the uncancelable Personable. But like I said, I would have to address my biases in that video because they do exist. Fortunately, I could say I separate myself from them, but I don't know if that's necessarily 100% true. So I just wanted to mention that upright. Right. Thanks for watching. You guys have a great day. Bye.
The CDC just updated their guidelines again. Now they're saying that if you get COVID, you should CDC's nuts. LOL, yo mama, ratio, got 'em. I don't know what that means, but I do know that every customer at work is mad at me about it.